Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever the fuck you're tuning in. This is a mobile episode of Tailgate Trashtalk brought to you by Backyard Sports. We're outside here enjoying the weather, got a little fire going. It's fall here in Virginia, very mild evening, not too cold, and plenty nippy to get a fire going. Bentley, how you feeling, man?
It's we're in the best stretch of weather we have in the state of Virginia here. We get about 4 weeks of just absolutely beautiful, beautiful weather.
Yes, sir.
High 60s during the day, kind of high 40s at night. It's just, I mean, you can't ask for anything better. And on top of that, we get football every day of the week.
I agree. It's beautiful. I had to take advantage, obviously, of the weather here in Virginia. And of course, football on the weekends. We got college. We're still in the midst of our 57 straight days of football. Those that are basketball fans, season is starting. Buckets kicked off the preseason or the season preview last week, and we'll be covering first week's action. And we'll have a couple nights worth of action, but it is opening week to cover tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Tune in if you're a basketball fan. And for you hockey fans, obviously that season has started as well. We've not got a team that has Stanley Cup aspirations around here, but we're chasing greatness, man. We got Ovi chasing the great one, Wayne Gretzky, in terms of his goal scoring. So we got something to tune in for, even if the team isn't necessarily going to threaten for Lord Stanley's Cup. But we're here to talk college football, man. And we had an interesting weekend. We had another tough weekend, so we're on back-to-back tough weeks. We're going to bounce back this week, but still above 500 for the season. However, we had a number of upsets, a number of surprise wins, another number of surprise covers. Some big numbers got covered that we didn't necessarily think would. So we'll jump right into it. Starting the week off, Oregon, Purdue. This is one of those big numbers that got covered that neither of us really thought would. What ended up happening is Purdue got shut out. Really, that's what it boils down to with the number. Oregon looked good on offense, though. Starting to see a little more explosiveness out of them. We saw it a little bit in the Ohio State game that maybe we wouldn't have expected to see it, but we're starting to see this Oregon offense start to really get things going. And fuck, dude, that defense is good. I know you and I talked about it with the Ohio State game, but they come back and they shut out Purdue, who'd been put 50, basically, essentially 50 up against Illinois the week prior. Talk to me about Oregon, man. Are we starting to see? Are they the best college football team this year?
This Oregon team, and not necessarily based off their play style, but just kind of the storyline of the year, how it's playing out. This Oregon team reminds me of last year's Washington team, where if you remember last year, Washington obviously played Oregon twice, and I think I was on Oregon both times, I think, and obviously I was proven wrong. Now, a 35 to nothing blowout is not proving anybody wrong necessarily, but we pick against the spread on the show, and obviously we were both on the opposite side of that.
Yep.
But similar in that we had doubts about Washington, or I had doubts about Washington kind of all year long, and I thought that Oregon was the better team. You and I both have had doubts about this Oregon team at different points throughout the season. And we've been patient, and we both have said kind of like, wait, it'll build up, they'll get better. And then they proved it against Ohio State. And then they came out, and like you said, they pitched that shutout against a Purdue team that's not awful. Like they're not
Right.
Purdue's not a bad football team. They just they were overwhelmed by the amount of skill and athleticism that Oregon brought down to Purdue. And I admittedly bought fully into the weird things happen on Friday night. We saw a couple teams in Purdue and West Virginia bring out like all black alternate jerseys that were just incredible looking jerseys. And I bought into it fully. I was like, hey, that's too many points. And obviously I was wrong. Oregon's really, really, really good. And I think Dan Lanning's an incredible coach. And the things that he's building up there in Eugene is something that's going to be sticking around for a while because, this is something we can talk about later. But when revenue sharing comes to college football next year, he's going to have even more money and more outside NIL opportunities for those kids. He's going to be able to pay them a boatload of money and bring them up there to Austin Stadium and rain hell on the rest of the Big Ten. And it's going to be on the rest of the conference to keep up with Oregon at this point.
Yeah, look, we talk about this in our group chat. We've got a online dynasty playing college football 25. We've talked about the game quite a bit on the show. You wait 10 years for a game to come back. you're going to talk about it a little bit. Everybody's excited that played it. Those that hadn't played it before have gotten their exposure to it. But Oregon's a national brand too, right? So Dan Lanning and company have taken advantage of that. They've paired that in terms of the ability to bring recruits and bring studs and bring stars in the transfer portal. Dylan Gabriel, Bo Nix, both the last 2 seasons, quarterbacks that transferred up to Oregon that have been difference makers for that team. Wide receivers, they keep bringing in athletes. Tez Johnson is notably their biggest kind of explosive playmaker on the team. But what Dan Lanning's doing up there, like they can kind of play like a hybrid style. Like they can kind of play with whatever style you want to play with. Where with like Ohio State, right? We talked about it. The front four for Ohio State, they probably have 7 defensive linemen in that front four that they can rotate in and out. And they almost didn't sniff Dylan Gabriel all night. And that's a testament to what they've done in terms of understanding that, they probably didn't know they were going to the Big Ten, right? Maybe there were rumblings. We don't know what was going on behind closed doors, but that's a testament to understanding we've got to be good up front. We've got to win in the trenches. We've watched Washington do it last year all the way to the national championship game. And oh, by the way, they played Michigan in the national championship game, who also built in the trenches and dominated on both sides of the line of scrimmage. So it's great to see what they're doing up there, man. Oregon's fun because of all those great kits. You mentioned Purdue's kit, but Oregon's got a lot of combinations they can pull out too. It's one of those things about college football that's special. The NFL has like a primary home, a primary away, and one alternate jersey or uniform. College football doesn't have those restrictions, and Nike just says, we're just going to have fun. One interesting point, Dan Lanning does have like final sign-off on the uniforms. He was on the Dan Patrick show. I listened to that fairly religiously, and he was talking about like, there's been a couple of times he's been like, that's a little extreme, but for the most part, Nike has kind of free will to do whatever the hell they want with the uniforms up there in Eugene, and we see him do crazy shit with it. That's something that attracts recruits as well, right? Like people want to go play and have fun with the uniform, so they are building a program, and we're talking about one of the new teams in the Big Ten. They might be here to stay atop the Big Ten. Unlike some of the other ones from the West Coast that we're seeing kind of struggle with making that adjustment in terms of time zone and style of play.
Yeah, Oregon powerhouse, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Real good.
All right, onward and upward. BYU, Oklahoma State. This got real fucking exciting down the stretch. BYU didn't cover, obviously. It ends up 38-34, I think was the final score.
35.
35, yeah. Okay, they ended up winning by – yeah, they were down 4 and needed that touchdown to win. Yep. Crazy sequence to finish the game, and it looked like for a while like the real Oklahoma State showed up and they were going to kind of beat up on BYU. Ollie Gordon had a good first, especially the first half, had a really good first half. They were getting decent quarterback play, which is something they haven't gotten all year. But BYU perseveres. The BYU decides he's going to take over in the fourth quarter, and BYU toughs one out. We've talked a lot about how BYU is physical, and that's kind of been their calling card for how they've kind of handled Big 12 teams this year. Do you see BYU as potentially like a team that's going to run the table? And is this the playoff team from the Big 12, BYU?
Can I answer that question next week?
After the UCF game?
Yeah, after the UCF game.
I agree.
I mean, coming out of that game Friday night, you probably feel the best about them. Maybe K-State. Those are probably the 2 best teams in the Big 12 if I had to put money on it right now. Yeah, they just kind of beat you in all facets, right? Like their quarterback threw 2 picks, but their defense bowed up at the end of the fourth quarter when they needed to, right? So they're very complimentary, and we talked about it going into the week last week. They have the offensive linemen and the horses up front to kind of bully teams out of games, and that's – Ollie Gordon, you texted me during the game. It was like Ollie Gordon breakout game. And I was like, man, it was 8 weeks too late, right?
2 months too late here.
This is, we made the joke probably 2 weeks ago, maybe last week where, everybody's down on Oklahoma State. Well, next year they're probably going to win the Big 12 because there's no expectations, right? I feel this was a microcosm of that, right? They're going to face an undefeated BYU team on the road in Provo. And then they stick with it right to the end, and they have a chance with the ball at the end of the game to win. And it's like, that's just what Mike Gundy does as an underdog. Yeah, he's Mike Tomlin of college football.
Yeah,
Like that's kind of how he is. That's one comparison I have for a college coach. I have an even better one we can talk about at the end of the rank slates because it's off
I
the
like it.
board. Oh
I
yeah,
like it. I like
I
it.
workshopped it this week. I'm a big fan of it.
Oh yeah, love it, love it. All right, onward down the board. Miami ends up covering for us. This was not a walk in the park for them. They were on the road, obviously playing in Louisville. Louisville, I think, is a better team than we would have expected maybe them to be at the beginning of the season. I know that they had a nice run last year, played in the ACC championship game, but they really kind of laid an egg and embarrassed themselves a bit in the ACC championship game last year, where Florida State didn't have a quarterback. They were just running the ball, playing defense, and Louisville just kept giving the ball away. Louisville is feisty. They are going to stick around and they're going to fight you. They want to kind of punch you in the mouth. They got a little bit of a dual threat at quarterback. Miami struggled a bit here, but as Miami has done all year, it just seems like they find a way. And I know you're very high on Miami. I was high, but not nearly as high as you on Miami this year. So talk to me about this Miami team. Do you feel better as the weeks go as they kind of struggle but find a way to win, or does it worry you that these later games in the season they could slip up and let one fall? Because I'm not sure a one-loss ACC champion is guaranteed a playoff spot.
They are.
Are Yeah, you're right. But they wouldn't hose. Top 4 seed, right? I don't know that
Sure.
they'd be guaranteed the top 4 seed, especially with Boise State in the Mountain West and BYU in the Big 12. We'll see how that goes. But
so I assume you kind of meant that a one loss
non-ACC.
One
That's
loss
exactly
ACC.
what I did not say properly.
So hypothetical, Clemson beats Miami in the ACC title game. We're not sure Miami gets in.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes more sense.
That's more what I was getting at. I just did not say it.
Yeah. I just don't know how to. So I'll talk about Miami first. I still am confident in Miami. I think they're better than Clemson is. Their defense is not good. We've seen that multiple times. But with Cam Ward playing quarterback, you always have a chance. That offense is incredible. He's got, I think it's 9 guys with double-digit receptions on the season, including a running back. So it's like that man is spreading the ball around. He's hitting everybody available to him in that offense.
People don't usually spread the ball around like that in college either.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a Tom Brady sort of thing in the NFL.
Yeah, it's one look, maybe a second look, and then most people are off. He's scanning the whole field, right?
Yep.
A lot of the reason why he's shooting up draft projections at the moment. He's solidified himself into the first round, I think, at this point. But that defense, if they are to drop a game, it's because that defense in Miami is not good. They have the talent, they have the roster. For some reason, they can't get stops strung together. And you talked about this not being a walk in the park. That's absolutely accurate. I mean, Louisville was in this game basically until about halfway through the third or the fourth quarter. And then Kim Ward just kind of took over, and that defense for Miami bowed up a little bit, and they were able to get some stops and get Louisville off the field. But anytime you give up 448 yards, like that's not a good weekend. You know, like you don't feel great about that. And we saw the same thing with the Cal game. Like Cal kind of gifted them that game. Like that was a game that Cal should have won, and it wasn't for Cam Ward magic down the stretch. They probably don't win that game, and we're potentially looking at a 2-loss Miami team at this point.
The Vatech game.
Yeah, the Vatech game. Like it's they've eked out 3 wins now that really could have gone either way. Almost coin flip. I guess 2 were coin flips. This one they won solidly, but again, Louisville was in it down the stretch. It's like I'm still confident in Miami. I believe in Cam Ward. I was high on him last year at Wazoo. I love him down there in Miami. I still think they're the best team in the ACC. That may be a little bit of homerism rooting against Clemson, but I still think that's true. I think they win the ACC.
Ain't nothing wrong with hating on Clemson.
I mean, a bunch of fucking bozos down there. Dude, clown shit in Clemson. Yeah, I still like Miami.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on, Virginia, Clemson. Speaking of Clemson, I would consider this kind of an egg lay of a game. I tuned in off and on to this game because I had the quad box YouTube TV. Thank you. So I was able to kind of pull up more games than I probably would have if I was dedicating them to screens. In this one, it was interesting to watch because Clemson seemed like at times that they were very stuck in the mud. And we've talked about the offense for Clemson. Like, it's been a surprise for the last about month. And each week we've come on the show like, is this offense good? Like, can we finally say that they're good? Well, I think that we can still say that there are question marks, right? About the offense, about Cade Klubnik and his ability to beat you through the air. Virginia was able to take away some of the runs early in the game. He wasn't necessarily as dangerous with his feet. So, I think we've seen kind of the recipe, right? If you can slow down that run game and make Cade Klubnik beat you with his arm, he might not. Now they got to go in late in the game and whatnot, but they really were at risk of potentially letting one slip away here. Obviously didn't cover the big number that we thought they would because Virginia's bad. So this is not a great win. A win's a win, right? In college football, if you win the weekend, you win the game. That's the most important part because of how important every weekend is. But this is one that feels like not a great win for a Clemson team. And I know you want to hate on them here. So,
What do you mean, dude? This was the biggest win in Clemson's probably school history. They rushed the field after they beat.
I don't
like.
get it. I don't get it.
The very person on this podcast last week that stood on the table for schools rushing the field and said, "Hey, have your fun." Fuck out of here, Clemson, dog. You beat an unranked UVA team at home. Get off the field, dog.
Right.
Like, you guys want to talk about yourself so high and mighty. We're this national program. We win titles, and Deshaun Watson isn't an animal. Like, nah, dude. You rushed the field after beating Virginia. Get out of here, dude. Clemson. I agree with whatever you said, or not whatever, with what you laid out there. If you were able to slow down the run game and force Clemson to be a throw-first offense, I feel pretty good about your chances, specifically South Carolina's chances the last game of the season when we have to, number one ranked pass defense in the SEC. Whatever. It is what it is. I'm not sure Cade Klubnik will make it out of that game healthy.
That's just a thing,
It's casual. 9 sacks with 9 different players. It's cool. Whatever. Force Oklahoma to fire their offensive coordinator. It is what it is. I know we're talking about Clemson and how awful they are, but I had to sneak that in there just a little bit, right? Just quickly. But yeah, Clemson, they're clowns, dude. They're obviously a good football team. You can't deny that. I don't know that they're the 10th best team in the country, though.
Sure, I would agree. Especially after that performance, you gotta bounce back this week and show me something after that performance against Virginia.
Yeah,
Indiana, Nebraska. Is it time that we become believers, man? We both took Nebraska with 6.5. I think, for me anyway, I don't know if we both agreed, but I thought Nebraska, in terms of like the big bodies, was going to be able to kind of bully Indiana a little bit. No. Indiana looks like they're the real deal. I know it's not a real quote, but and now his name always eludes me on how to pronounce it. What's the coach's last name from JMU? Signetti. Yeah. I always want to say like Sistetti. I don't know why that comes into my head every fucking time. I'm going to get it.
Something Italian. Throw it out there.
Yeah, right. I should say it like Mario from Mario Brothers. Yeah. But anyway, somebody put a meme together that said like, I don't know why everybody's surprised. I just fucking win, because it's what he's done everywhere. And then it had like his.
Oh, that's record. A real quote. That's a real quote.
Is it?
Yeah. Before the season, they had a press conference and they were talking. He was like, it's new reporters or whatever they're talking to him. He goes, all I do is win. Google me. And then like walked off the stage.
I thought it was a fucking like one of those made up one. That's good for him, dude.
Yeah.
Hang brain on the Big Ten because he's delivered. They're 7-0. Who thought Indiana, Hoosier football, was going to be undefeated with a week left in October?
Not me. Not me.
Not me. But man, they're playing sound football. Nebraska made some mistakes. They were able to kind of force them into some, and they took advantage of it. He just fucking wins wherever he goes, man. Just wins.
Yeah, I mean, it's reminiscent of what Kalen DeBoer did at Indiana. He was the offensive coordinator, but still, like, this guy's on an upward trajectory to a big-time job very quickly, because Indiana's still a basketball school, right?
It is.
And they have
basketball state.
Still a basketball state, second best basketball state in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, They still have some games left on the schedule. They could
They do.
finish the year. What do they play? A 12 games, so they go like
12.
11-1.
Yeah.
If they go 11-1 with their only loss being to Ohio State, would not shock me if they're in the playoff. Not at all.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
for sure. I
believe.
mean, you look, what do they got? They got, look, Michigan and Ohio State.
Yeah,
Is that
basically.
really where we think I mean, Ohio State might be where they get their loss because the schedule isn't daunting. It is Big Ten schedule, but it's
Yeah.
Washington, it's Michigan State, it's Michigan, Ohio State. They go to the horseshoe, and then they finish with Purdue at home. I'm with you. I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if they were 11-1 with the loss being to Ohio State, and they get in as like the 10 seed, 9 seed, 10 seed, something like that. An 11-1 Big Ten team, I think, gets into the playoff. Honestly, despite it being Indiana, not a traditional program, but I think an 11-1 Big Ten gets in for sure.
Non-traditional programs playing in the playoff is what we are getting with the combination of the 12-team playoff, NIL, and transfer portal. That's
Yeah,
just
and I'm here for it.
That's
Honestly,
where we're at.
I'm here for it. I think it's a good opportunity to start to see some of these non-traditional programs on a bigger stage. I know we both agree that watering down the playoff is not what we wanted, but if this is a byproduct of it, I'm here for it. I'd like to see these teams on big stages.
I still have a whole.
We've lost the value of the New Year's Six games, right? That
Yes.
used to be where you wanted to see these teams, New Year's Six bowls. They go and play on a big stage. We've lost the value of that, right? So our new reality is if we get a couple of these non-traditional programs in the 8 through 12 spots in the playoff, I think I can accept that as a positive byproduct of a watered-down playoff.
I have a whole rant that I can give on a moment's notice about why I still dislike the 12-team playoff.
I'm not disagreeing with you either. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm trying to be Mr. Positivity.
Look, I'll give you the synopsis of it, right? You can go back and listen. I never once said that the 12-team playoff was not going to be fun. I knew it was going to be fun.
Sure.
But what you just said, we've lost all value of the New Year's Six Bowl. 100%. When you and I were young and watching college football, if there was a game on New Year's Day, that was an important game.
Yes.
Now it's a playoff game. And now
that was the game you watched when you were nursing a hangover.
Exactly.
You had a lot of fun.
Yeah, maybe not super young, but yeah. Some younger than others. The 12-team playoff diminishes the value of these regular season games. They are just as fun as ever. However, that is more of a product of transfer portal and NIL than it is the 12-team playoff, right? This game we're going to talk about coming up in our next week's slate, the UNLV Boise State game, that is for all intents and purposes an elimination game. It would matter because it's a ranked and unranked game on a Friday night. It would still matter without the 12-team playoff, but now it's super fun, and I get that. But if you ask me straight in my face, do I think that UNLV or Boise State can win a national title? Fuck no.
No.
Those teams, they're good teams. They're very, very fun. I want to see Ashton Jeanty play as many games as possible. Yeah. And the playoff, if they win Friday night, the playoff is going to give me the opportunity to see that. And that's awesome. That's cool. But you know what? That team is not good enough to compete for a national title.
Sure.
They should be playing in probably a New Year's Six Bowl, because they're going to win their conference. They're going to be the highest rated group of 5 team, whichever one of these two wins Friday night. And then they get to play LSU on December 31st or January 1st, right? But I don't need to see UNLV go to, Tennessee and play in Knoxville and then lose and the game just doesn't mean anything like that. It's going to be super fun, but it holds no value to me, right? Okay, cool. You lost the playoff game. Did you get to travel anywhere cool? Did you guys get to go play a neutral site game in Orlando? Did you get to go to Hawaii? Did you get to go to No, you went to Knoxville to play an on-prem game. Again, with the expanded playoff, it's going to be super fun. These on location, on campus games are going to be super fun. But it just doesn't mean the same to me. I don't. That's sorry to get off track.
You're not wrong. Onward and upward. Auburn gives Mizzou all they can handle. Listen, the injury was absolutely the number one
Yep.
factor in this. Losing what's probably going to be an NFL quarterback, what's probably going to be maybe a day 2 NFL quarterback, a day 2 draft NFL quarterback is a big deal. But I mean, credit to Auburn for sticking and really being feisty and not really giving up on their season because it hasn't gone well. They've dropped a few games that they probably felt like they should have won or at least should have been in late in those games. But Mizzou, they've got a dude in Luther Burden, but if they don't get Brady Cook back to Brady Cook, and this team is very, very different. And I think that goes without saying, right? When you talk about an NFL quarterback at the collegiate level, but you and I have talked about how fun it is to see them building that program up there in the other Columbia. What do you think are Mizzou's chances? If can they survive?
Yeah, I mean, look, I had my reservations about them when Brady Cook went down, and then he came back in the game. I felt pretty good, and then I heard his statement after the game, and they asked him, they were like, "Hey, why did you like? What was the motivating factor to come back? Like, was the injury that bad?" He goes, "No, it sucked. Like, the injury really sucked." He goes, "I only have like 3 games left on campus here at Missouri, and I'm not going to miss a second of them sitting in the back of my ambulance." And I was like, "That man is a dog.
He's a dog.
That is dog mentality right there." So I believe in him. I think we've been on it all year.
My concern is in a diminished capacity, though, right? Like,
sure,
if he's not the Brady Cook that we fell in love with, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. There are a few, Dad. We'll talk about that in just a moment. That's a good question.
I think he's fine. I think Missouri's okay. 90% of Brady Cook is better than 100% of Drew Pine. So
listen, 40% of Brady Cook is better than 110% of Drew Pine. That was miserable.
Yeah.
Miserable watching. I thought they were going to lose that game, like outright lose that game with Drew Pine at the helm. But they were able to persevere. Obviously, you mentioned Brady Cook comes back late in the game. It looked like he was in some discomfort, but they were able to tough it out, win the game. That's the most, as I mentioned previously, just keep winning, right? Just keep winning in college football.
The most important takeaway from this, though, is that if you listen to Hugh Freeze, you'll understand that none of these losses are his fault.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah. That motherfucker, he drives the bus every week.
Then it's only the players' fault. It's not his fault.
Oh, yeah.
Now, they're his players, but it's not his fault.
Right. So we'll take a little bit of a sidebar here and talk about programs in college that are good in both basketball and football. You're looking at a lot of like the Big Ten schools, the SEC schools. There's maybe a couple of ACC schools you can kind of lump in there. In terms of like perennially, traditionally good in both basketball and football, though, the list does get shorter because you look at like Miami. I'll take Miami for example, right? For a long time, Miami was kind of a mid to low tier team in the ACC in terms of basketball. They've always kind of been a traditional team in football. Florida State, another one that I would say is like you'll get like a run from a Florida State team where they've got a year or a couple of years where they're really, really good. And then in other years, it's kind of like they're feisty in the middle of the pack in the ACC. But you look at like Ohio State. Ohio State's been really good in basketball for quite a while. They're kind of down. It's hard in terms of like maintaining that perennial success in both sports. Even you look at the basketball powerhouses, right? UNC and Duke. Once in a while, you get a flash in the pan from them in basketball. But really, it's tough. It's tough for a lot of these schools to maintain that status as an elite program in both football and basketball. Do you have any other examples you want to talk about? I know I mentioned a few there, but
I have my answer for this question because people ask it. I've talked about this before, not on the show, but I have an answer. My statement answer every time this question comes up: Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Wisconsin is they're never bad at either one.
Right.
They're going to make the NCAA tournament just about every year, so they're always one of the 64 best teams in the country. and their football team is probably always one of the best 50 teams in the nation, right? Like
They sneak into the top 25 in the final season standings like all the fucking time in football.
yeah, they have Final Fours. They don't
Yep.
have a national title, but they have Final Fours. They have Sweet 16 runs. They've won the Big Ten in basketball, right? And they've won it in football as well. They have a very historic college football program there.
Yep.
That's usually my answer, right? When people ask what is the school that is the best at both.
That might be the best example.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't off the top of my head, I don't know that I could think of another one that's better.
Oregon potentially they've been their basketball is not as good as Wisconsin, but
They've been better though in the last 15 years.
Alabama right now is probably the real answer. Final 14 from last year, and obviously football speaks for itself. But Nate Oates there, Arkansas with Cal coming into town, like Sam Pittman maybe getting fired, but maybe not. Like their football is not awful. I'd say it's probably on the same tier as like Wisconsin. And then obviously Cal raises the floor of your basketball program. There's a few, but Texas, if you want to say like after the Vince Young era, their basketball program went up and their football program went down. Obviously, like with Kevin Durant coming into town, but they're another one that's been good on both sides. There's a few, but usually my stock answer for that one is Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's the sustainability for me, right? You look at some of the ones that you mentioned, some of the ones that I mentioned. They go through kind of ebbs and flows in one sport or the other. And yeah, it's tough, right? Because like you put so much resourcing into one program or another, but it's also like football hotbeds are not necessarily basketball hotbeds, right? The state of Florida is not producing a ton of really good basketball players. The state of Texas does, but doesn't produce really good basketball players. But those are the two biggest football hotbeds, in my opinion. And I know the state of California will argue, and maybe Ohio is going to try to jump in there and argue as well. But Florida and Texas are probably the two prime examples of like real football hotbeds. And neither of those, we're not seeing a bunch of like 4 and 5 star basketball recruits out of those two states on an annual basis. So I think it has a lot to do with that as well. North Carolina is a great basketball state. They've got typically every year, they've got like 3 teams that are really good. 2 are absolute blue chippers, but 3 each year, like Clemson will be up or NC State will be up, something along those lines every year. And then, you look at some of the other basketball states, Indiana, there's not a lot of football there. So I think it has to do with kind of regionality, location, but also like, you have to put a lot of resources into building an annual, like a perennial sustainable contender. You have to put a ton of resources in, and schools just can't necessarily foot the amount of resources that it requires to be really good in both sports.
Auburn, another one.
Yeah.
We just talked about their football team being bad, but like, Bruce Pearl down there
won 2 national championships in the last, dozen years or so?
Yeah, I mean, they're a good program, and they made a Final Four with Bruce Pearl and Jabari Smith.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they were kind of one iffy call away from beating that Virginia team that went on to win the national championship. So, yeah. They've been really good in basketball.
There will be 4 Tobacco Road teams in the NCAA tournament this year. Just a heads up for all y'all basketball nuts out there. UNC,
and you don't know the smaller conferences either. Smaller conferences, you could get like an NC Wilmington or something along those lines that sneaks in as well. But yeah, for sure. All right, onward, upward. Let's see where we're Army and East Carolina. This got weird down the stretch. I think Army was just kind of like, we just want to get this game over with, and East Carolina was like, we're not going away.
Yep.
This had the threat of not covering. In fact, I got the line on Saturday at 17, so I pushed on that, but we had it 16 on the show, so we covered. Beautiful. Army looked like they were running away and they were going to just hide. East Carolina stayed with it, came back. Mostly want to focus on Army here though, because we've got two main service academies. The Army Navy game is the big one at the end of the year in the top 25. We're going to get them on the board in matchups each week here. But how fun is it thinking about the fact that we might have 2 top 25 teams playing in the Army Navy game at the end of the year?
It's awesome, except that game has no effect on the final standings.
No.
Yeah. Which I think is cool, by the way. I think it's cool. Yeah. They keep that tradition in an ever-changing sport where traditions are seemingly going away.
Yeah.
Maintaining that one, I think, is awesome.
Yep.
Sure. Also, ECU fired their coach after this game.
I missed that.
So
So
yeah, they
tough
fired
go.
their coach after this game. But
That's a
yeah, I
tough go.
mean, you laid it out perfectly. Army looked like they were going to run away and hide, and then the Pirates said, "Not so fast, my friends." And they tried to fight back, but 17. I mean, that's beating a team handedly.
Yeah, yep, for sure. Alabama, Tennessee, and Alabama has kind of sandwiched a survival win between two losses where I I don't know what's going on with the offense. I think that's my biggest question right now. Is like I thought with Kalen DeBoer coming in, the offense was just going to be fine, and we might even see a better version of Jalen Milroe. And you and I alluded to it during, I believe it was during the Georgia game, we were talking about it, and you asked the question like, was Nick Saban holding Jalen Milroe back? And now we've kind of seen Jalen Milroe regress in the last 3 weeks. The Vandy game where they lost the big upset, they survived to win, and then this Tennessee game where they just couldn't get anything going. What's going on with Bama? Are they just a mediocre SEC team at this point?
So my like 10,000 foot view of what's happening in Alabama is that they're far less disciplined that they were under Nick Saban. They get a lot of pre-snap penalties, which there's a wonderful side by side photo of Kalen DeBoer after the South Carolina game. As you laid it out, they hung on to win, and he's smiling on the sidelines. And then there's a side by side photo of Nick Saban up 24 points in the national title game against Notre Dame, berating the referees because of
Matter
the
the
holding
Hornet.
call. Yeah, I mean, just like up 3 scores in a national title game and just furious, right? So I don't say that as a knock against Kalen DeBoer, right? Because I have a lot of Kalen DeBoer stock. I think he's a phenomenal coach. Excuse me. But right now they're just an undisciplined team. And they came out this week and said they're focusing on the small things again, the being on times, the tucking in your shirts, the disciplinary things that make teams that really get them locked in on game day to be operating as one solid unit, which is really just not what they're doing. That's my 10,000 foot view. The more granular view I think of what is actually happening in Alabama is that it's kind of two-pronged, right? It's a change of regime. It never goes. I can't think of a single time where it's gone absolutely like perfectly smoothly from one to the next, right? Whenever Urban Meyer left Ohio State, Ryan Day took over, and now they've lost to Michigan, 4 years, 3 years in a row, whatever it is, right?
It's
So
been
there's
1,000
always,
days since they beat Michigan.
yeah, right. So like it's never the smoothest one guy to the next. It just is not.
Yep.
That, and I know I keep harping on this, but the transfer portal and NIL, the talent around college football is more spread out than it ever has been.
Yep.
And Nick Saban's big thing, and then Kirby Smart started doing it out at Georgia, is they hoard talent, right? Nick Saban, for years, would make the joke, oh man, freaking CJ Mosley got hurt. There goes their middle linebacker. Oh, wait.
I got another 5-star.
Exactly, right? They can't do that anymore at Alabama.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
incredibly talented guys, but it's not the same level as
Yep.
it used to be. And so you see these other programs that if they are a disciplined team and they don't have any injuries, they might be a better team than Alabama at this point, right?
Yeah.
I think those are all things that are addressable by Kalen DeBoer. We just, for God's sakes, we just saw him play in a national title game. He had an offensive line. Yeah, at Washington. He had an offensive line that 2 years ago won the award. I forget what it's called, but won the award for the best offensive line of football, and then finished second last year only to the Michigan team, who had the best offensive line.
Won the national championship.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's like these things, it's not an immediate success handoff. Like that just doesn't happen. It takes a little bit of time. And the only reason we're asking is Alabama mid is because they're fucking Alabama, right? Like,
yeah.
If Ole Miss goes to Tennessee and loses, that's like, oh man, Lane Kiffin, like tough.
Yep.
It's Alabama, so that's why we're asking the question: are they a middling SEC team? Yeah, they're 2-2, but like, there's more talent spread out everywhere, and they are not disciplined at the moment. They will be fine. Now, maybe not this year. Maybe not even for like the first half of next year. They will be fine under Kalen DeBoer. It's just a new era of college football we're playing in.
Yeah, for sure. I think the most surprising piece is what you mentioned, the undisciplined piece, because we didn't see that from Washington last year. So this is not just a Kalen DeBoer thing. But I do think you're absolutely right. Like there's a obviously they have players left over from the Saban era. And when you go from a guy who, as you put it so well, that like is up 3 scores in the national championship game and still lighting people up for mistakes they're making, to a guy who it does seem like Kalen DeBoer is a little more of like a player's coach. Vice Saban was like a CEO of that program. It is a bit of a transition, and it might just be this is that transition year that we're seeing. On top of the fact that maybe it's a change in the offense and the cadence and some of the ways they're doing things, more motion maybe. I know Bama's a team that historically has not done a ton of like motion, except when Lane Kiffin was the offensive coordinator there. So it might be just a combination of a number of factors. And yeah, as you said, like Alabama's, they're what, 5-2 or 6-2 right now, and for us to say like, are they bad? Like that's a weird thing to say at a 2-loss team, but they have struggled for the better part of a month. So it'll be interesting to see how things change as the season goes with how they're going to buckle down on some of that stuff.
Do you know off the top of your head the last time Alabama had 2 losses before the end of October?
Was it Saban's first year?
It was.
Yeah, I know that first year was they went 4 losses, 5 losses that year.
I think so. Yeah. I think it was 4.
But yeah, that makes sense. That yeah, that's a long time because it was what 20 years.
17.
Yeah.
But was anyone asking, is Alabama bad? Nick Saban's first year, right? Like
in their defense for not asking that question, Alabama was pretty bad when Saban came back, though.
Sure, 100%. But
but no, your point is absolutely right.
Yeah, you can like I
it's
understand.
It's his first year.
And I get why you asked the question. I'm not faulting you for asking the question, but like you have to take things. You have to put them in each perspective, right? It is Nick Saban's not there, right? So if we were asking, is a Nick Saban 2-loss team bad? That I could understand,
sure.
right? Is Saban losing it? Is like whatever. But like this is a whole new regime. You have to separate yourself from what happened in the past and only look at what's happening now. This team is still immensely talented, and they have an incredible coach who's in his very first season there. Yeah. He will get the train back on the tracks, and they will be fine.
Yep, I agree.
And if not, then I never said any of that.
Good for Tennessee, though. It's a big win for them.
Yep.
We had talked about whether or not they were going to be able to deliver on some of the preseason expectations. This is a big feather in their cap. At home in Knoxville, take care of business against an Alabama team. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. Notre Dame ends up kind of running away. I think the big thing here in terms of the line, we didn't know on Tuesday. I don't know if you would have changed your pick, but we didn't know that Haynes was going to sit out. He's a big deal, dual threat quarterback, guy who really makes that offense hum. I think I got fortunate in the fact that I went with Notre Dame early in the week, and then the injury news came out. But it's clear that Georgia Tech offense really centers around the Haynes and Haynes combo. And without their quarterback, that's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you are a running offense and you average 2.2 yards a carry for the game, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
And probably not cover. And that's exactly what happened.
Yep, absolutely. Michigan, Illinois. I never understood Michigan being the favorite in this game. Never did. This was the easiest money line upset pick of the week, the underdog to pick a money line for of the week. Illinois is a better team than Michigan this year. They were home. I never understood this Michigan laying 3 points. Vegas must have felt they could make money on that line. I made money on the money line pick. I appreciate it, Vegas. Thank you for the layup to get some additional juice. I know it was only like plus 145, I think it was, but still juice. Still juice.
Yeah, there's combination or that uniform combination that Illinois won.
Woo. Yeah, that was fucking fire. Did you see how they made the helmets too?
I didn't watch the video, but I read about it.
I thought it was a wrap.
Yeah.
And then I saw like a video where they showed the dude was fucking hand painting it with an airbrush.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Incredible. Phenomenal. No notes.
Yeah. No notes. Charlotte, Navy just keep scoring points. I think they just scored another touchdown, honestly, while we're on the show. This offense is unbelievable this year. And I mentioned, I know we talked either last week or the week before, like Ken Niumatalolo is out in San Jose State, I believe is where he's at now. And they're like throwing the ball like crazy after he coached Navy in the triple option forever. But this Navy offense is the real deal. Both of these two service academies that are in the top 25 are lighting it up in a number of ways. They're able to throw the ball, which is something that hasn't historically been true for either of those teams. But this Navy team putting up another 50 burger. Holy shit, it's fun to watch. I don't know that I'm even going to be able to find an Army-Navy ticket this year, but I'm going to try because it's in Landover. So we'll see if we can get to that game. But that's going to be a fun game. This Navy team's the real deal. Charlotte's not good, but to score 50 points in any game is a big deal for an offense.
Yeah, the two, but I'll lump Army in with this too. Like they're so efficient at what they do.
Oh my god,
it's crazy. We talk about it for years and years how difficult it is to prepare for the triple option, and now you throw in the ability that these guys have to throw the ball down the field on top of it. It's like
the
how do you stop
pass
that?
is part of the offense.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, man. I don't know. They're exciting games to watch because they're pretty much just going to score on every possession, and it's probably going to be like a 35-yard run.
Yep.
It's great.
Yep. It's fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, go Navy for sure. Go Navy.
Well, we can.
Yeah, we got to shout out the Army as well. Let's see. Yeah, Dad Bentley was he was an Army boy.
Yeah.
Mississippi State, Texas A&M. I got this very wrong. You got this very right. I guess I just underestimated Mississippi State again. I laid the points with Georgia the week before. Tried to lay the points with Texas A&M. Mississippi State is kind of maybe they're showing some pride in terms of not laying down and rolling over. But Texas A&M wasn't as efficient and effective on offense as we've seen them in the past. And Mississippi State was able to move the ball a little bit on this Texas A&M defense, which was the most surprising. I laid the points thinking A&M was going to score 28 and give up 10, but that was not the case. Kudos to Mississippi State. What do you think going forward? Texas A&M, or do you see something from Mississippi State that you like that maybe things aren't so dire down there in Starkville?
Yeah, they obviously were very bad to start the year, but they played decently well the last couple of weeks. They obviously lost this game by 10 still, so it's not like it was a one possession game. But I mean, scored 31 and then 24 in back-to-back weeks. That's not nothing, right? I wish that my teams could do that, but I just thought it was too many points for a home game. The atmosphere in college football matters a lot. I know Oregon shut out Purdue at home, but I think that Mississippi State is probably better than Purdue, if I'm being completely honest. I just thought it was too many points. Texas A&M maybe a look ahead spot. They got a big game this weekend coming up. I'm just glad I got it right. I may not bet on Mississippi State again the rest of the year, but I snuck in right at the time. Yeah,
we will take that one. LSU, Arkansas. We were both pretty high on Woo Pig. LSU showed up, took it to them on the road. What's your ceiling for this LSU team this year?
Oh man. That game's gonna be sick. I'm excited.
Yeah, it is. We might get it twice in back-to-back weeks.
Yes, maybe potentially. Navy has to play Tulane, so
yeah.
Just hope they're not favorites.
Hopefully, Navy's a favorite and they win by a field goal or something. Right? Tulane can cover. Tulane can cover to keep the money train going, but Navy gets the win, right?
Tulane did not cover this weekend, by the way.
No, they
you know who has a better against the spread record than Tulane this year? South Carolina.
Ooh,
5-1. 5-1.
Nice.
Yeah. So LSU, I think could win the SEC. Honestly, because it is such a tumultuous season in the conference, it's almost impossible to tell from week to week who's going to win these games. Yeah. And if you tell me that LSU beats Texas A&M this weekend, I say they're on track to win the SEC and get an automatic bid to the playoff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an odd season, isn't it? Because I don't know about you, but I didn't have a lot of high expectations for this LSU team coming into this year. I wasn't sure what Garrett Nussmeier could be. But we'll see if they win this weekend. I think you're absolutely right, especially with kind of how their schedule broke out. They could have the inside track in the SEC. Yeah, we got some trades in fantasy football going on right now, trying to negotiate a little bit.
I'm not sure why you would combine a Wyoming quarterback and a Michigan State power forward, but I mean, I guess if that's what you want to do, that's fine. I don't.
Very nice.
Tom Izzo didn't like him that much, so he had to go play wide receiver at Florida State.
Yeah, clearly. Georgia, Texas. Not a big upset. 3.5 points. I think the most surprising part is Texas didn't look great at home against Georgia. Quinn Ewers got benched.
That's putting it nicely, so that they didn't look great.
Yeah,
they look fucking awful.
They look fucking terrible. Yeah, I was trying to be nice, but we're not nice on this show. But Quinn Ewers got benched, and I honestly was surprised to see that Sark went back to Ewers after half. I thought if you're gonna do it, you do it, and you leave the Band-Aid off, and you just kind of see. And if you go down in a blaze of glory with your backup quarterback, you give your starter an opportunity to come back the next week and prove it. But it just felt like desperation time for Texas, not something I expected from this team. What is Ewers? Is he going to be okay the rest of the season? Because he looked very fucking shell-shocked this weekend. And that Georgia defense is not the Georgia defense of 22 and 23.
So, yes, they're not the same defense, but they are still extremely good. There were people coming into the year taking them to win the national title, right? And then their offense has been the one that has let them down mostly this season, right?
Yeah.
So I was shocked that Georgia played as well as they did. Again, I just talked about how atmosphere matters in college football, and this was a night game on the road in one of the craziest places to play in Austin. You know, Matthew McConaughey on the sideline, game day was there. It was a big deal. The ice was tilted immediately, right? Yeah, well, you know, I had texted you because I was once again at a fucking wedding this weekend. I got home and I turned the game on and it's like 17-0, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" So I was extremely shocked. I'm going to ask you the question that is the elephant in the room. Throwing bottles on the field, forcing an overturned call. One, did you agree with the call on the field? Did you think it was OPI? Did you think it was DPI? And then do you think something should have been done in the moment about the bottles? Because they very, very clearly affected the outcome, not of the game, because ultimately Georgia tightened up when it mattered. But do you think something should have been done in that moment?
Yeah, I know, like, usually you'll get, like, an unsportsmanlike warning, right? You'll get a warning. Any more bottles on the field, we're going to assess a 15-yard penalty against the home team. I think my biggest problem with the whole thing is, one, they got the call right? When they overturned it, that was not DPI. It was, I don't know. Looking at it, too, I understand it's a fast game. It's a very difficult game to officiate. I understand that. But, like, you got to get the easy ones right? Like, that's always been my thing is, like, we know there's easy ones. We know there's difficult ones. We got to get the easy ones right. My biggest issue is we might have just opened Pandora's box and we might not be able to close it because you can't, even if you look at it and you say, we got it so wrong, we've got to do something about this. The moment they started throwing bottles on the field, that went out the window for me, because you can't then overturn the call after a delay of the game because of the bottles on the field, after you see it on the Jumbotron and you get together and you can't reward that behavior. And that's what it felt like for me in terms of, like, I just feel like we may have just opened Pandora's box, and I don't know how we close it. It's not a good look. I do think they got it right, though. After the review, they got the call right, but oof.
Well, there was no review.
Are we gonna start seeing this shit more?
I certainly hope not, because it obviously takes away from the game. But there was no review. That's why they were able to overturn it, is because they didn't review it. It was called on the field.
They just got together and were like,
exactly.
Oh, we got it wrong.
So
they were able to see it up on the big screen. And they were like, oh, we fucked up.
So I had dinner with my family last night, and my dad and my brother are huge Georgia fans, big Bulldog fans, right? My dad lived in Georgia for a long time, so he obviously, and then I tried to convince my brother to be a Carolina fan, but Georgia was really good, so
Yeah.
yeah, obviously he went with that one. But so I'm talking to my dad, and he's asked me about it, and he thought that the call on the field was correct, and I was like, well, what what's your reasoning for that? And I kid you not, quote for quote, my dad goes, well, if you look at it, the offensive guy hadn't even gotten his head around to locate the ball yet, and then he starts pushing on him. And I said, okay, when you say he starts pushing on him, what do you mean by that? And he goes, well, the offensive guy, puts his hands on the defender to turn around and find the ball. And I said, Dad.
So he thought they called OPI, maybe?
He was thinking that the DPI call was correct.
Oh.
So, yeah, he goes,
Okay.
and then he started pushing on him, meaning the defender was pushing on the offensive player. And
Okay.
I said, Dad, you just told me that the offensive player didn't get his head around to find the ball. So
Yeah.
the minute he puts his hands on that defender, that becomes an OPI call because he's not even trying to make a play on the ball. Whereas the defensive player, and Herbie said this on the call correctly, that defensive player has every right to make a play to get to the ball.
Yep.
Especially when the offensive player has not even turned his head around.
Yep.
And then not to mention that the offensive player is the one who initiated the contact and was putting his hands on the defender before the defender put his hands back on him. So
Yep.
I agree with you that the call after the officials met up, obviously during the delay game, which was not a good thing, and we cannot have that going forward. But I agree that after they made the decision to pick up the flag and reverse it, that was the correct call to give Texas the ball at the Georgia 9-yard line. However, I think in order to counteract what occurred with the bottles being thrown, they should have assessed a sideline warning and a 15-yard penalty. So then Texas gets first and goal from the 24 as opposed to
Yeah.
first goal from the 9. And they scored a touchdown on that play or on that series, right? If you remember. And they cut into the lead. And at that point in the game, I thought Texas was going to win because all momentum was on
Momentum
Texas'
had
side.
shifted heavy.
Exactly. And that whole stadium had turned. There was life back in the stands. I thought Texas was going to come back and win. Credit to Georgia for going in there and playing a heck of a ball game. Even after all of that shit occurred, Kirby was able to get his boys rallied. Carson Beck did not play a very good game, but such is life as a Georgia fan, I guess. But credit to Georgia, they really really surprised me this weekend. And again, you asked me the LSU what their ceiling is. I think the Georgia could also win the SEC, right? Like their quarterback is going to be the one that holds them back, if anything.
Yeah. Agreed. Do we have a quarterback controversy going forward in Texas?
No.
All right.
No.
All right.
It's Quinn Ewers.
All right.
Such. Is that big number? Is that big number 69?
I think
it's got to be, right?
I think it is. While you look that up, we'll move on to the UCF.
No, that's State Rutledge. Okay,
yeah. UCF Iowa State, big upset of the weekend. Iowa State was laying 2 touchdowns. BK with the heavy hitters, always. UCF almost they tried to give this fucking thing away. When are we gonna stop dropping the ball before we get in the end zone? When are we gonna do that? Because it is entertaining. I get that, but Jesus, man, across the goal line, they got very fortunate though that the ball laid there forever and it comes back to the spot of the fumble and yada yada yada. But they end up holding on to win here. UCF started to look like maybe what we expected from UCF to start the season. It had been kind of a weird trudge through the early part of the season here. Does this tell you more about Iowa State or about UCF, though?
Man, that's a good question. I mean, Iowa State still scored 38 on an offense that shut down or defense, I guess that was crushed by Colorado, who I still don't think is that great. But I don't know. It probably more about UCF than it does about Iowa State. We talk a lot about trap games or letdown spots. This may have been one of those spots for Iowa State. You crack the top 10. Everybody's talking about you in the Big 12. And then an unranked school from Orlando comes into town. You think you might just steamroll them, and then you have a letdown spot, and it happens, right? So I think it tells me more about UCF being able to get up for this game and compete with one of the better teams in the country than it does cause me concern for Iowa State. I still think they're good. I like what they're doing there. That rushing offense is still just as lethal as ever. 256 yards on the ground, like that's giving up 350 rushing yards doesn't feel great if I'm honest.
Yeah, we like
Um,
the rushing offense, not the rushing defense.
yeah, I still think Iowa State will be fine. It's going to be a three-headed race for the Big 12. At least that's what it looks like with K State, Iowa State, and BYU, and I'm excited for that. Should be a lot of fun. The K State's got some work to do to make up ground there, but I'm excited for the rest of that conference going forward. And I think Iowa State will be in the mix all the way to the end.
Yeah, nice. All right, K-State. Speaking of the Big 12, K-State handles business against West Virginia up in Morgantown. The wheels have kind of fallen off for the Mountaineers, and K-State seems to just stay the course. They're pretty steady with a little, once in a while you'll see a little bumble from them, but they seem to have figured out who they are on offense. Like they have their identity, and I think we're probably narrowing down the Big 12 to 2, maybe 3 teams. UCF could probably play spoiler here going forward, but K-State and BYU seem to have separated themselves a little bit in the Big 12. What do you see in terms, like, is K-State your favorite? I know you kind of hedged a little bit when I asked you that about BYU. Are you willing to go out on a limb for K-State, or do you really like talk to me next week?
No, I like K State to win the conference. I think they're the best team in the conference. They have the best player going right now. Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, whatever. They're not going to win the conference, but Avery Johnson. I said it before the year, and I said it a couple weeks in. I needed to see whether he could be a passer, whether he could be. He's proved it to me. He is extremely good. He's electric every single weekend on the television. If you have not watched a K-State game with Avery Johnson at quarterback, do yourself a favor.
Yeah.
Do so. Tune in. That lettuce flowing from the back of the helmet as he's running 23 miles an hour down the sideline is worth the price of admission.
Yep.
Which, if you pay for cable these days, is going to be $1 million. But regardless, K-State, I think, is the best team. They may not win the regular season, but if they get invited to play in the Big 12 championship game, I would expect them to win that game and get an automatic bid to the college football playoff.
All right. I like it. SMU, Stanford. SMU handles business. We talked about it last week. Over the last few weeks, they've really settled in on who their playmaker is on offense at the quarterback position, and it continues to show. They really hang on Stanford. Stanford's not a good team, though. And, for as much of a traditional powerhouse as they are in the ACC, it's not a good season for them. SMU, do you think they're going to potentially make some noise? Could you see them being the kind of the dividing factor between like Clemson and Miami? I know we look at those two teams as potentially on a collision course for the ACC championship, but is SMU, are they good enough?
They're gonna need some help. Next year they're good enough. Can I say that? Is that okay? Am I allowed to say that? I like them. They're a ton of fun to watch. They scored an 87-yard touchdown on the very first play from scrimmage. Like, if you don't love that, you don't love college football. You know what I'm saying? They're probably the third best team in the ACC. I think I don't have it up in front of me, but that's just off the top of my head. I think that they're the third best team. I don't Louisville maybe, but they beat Louisville, so like you can't even say that. Virginia Tech potentially, and I think it's SMU. I think it's definitely them.
So here's something to consider with SMU, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their toughest game left on their schedule is Pitt at home. Pitt currently ranked 19th. They play Duke, they play Pitt, they play Boston College, which could be tough, but that's at home, so I'll take Pitt over a Boston College if that was up in Boston. And then they've got at Virginia, maybe Charlottesville gets up for it, and then they're home against Cal, who's got to travel across the country. Well, across half the country because Smooth's not exactly touching the Atlantic Ocean either.
Yeah, ACC territory, man.
So if they run the table, obviously they'll be in the ACC championship game. Where's the stumbling block? Is it Pitt? Is Pitt at home the stumbling block for them on the schedule? And then is that what you're looking at in terms of like them needing help?
So not to give away my pick this weekend, but I did pick Duke to cover 11.5.
Are you taking the money line?
You asked me where the stumbling point is. You just asked me.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'm a firm believer in home field advantage in college football.
Yeah.
I also think that that Duke is pretty good. Duke at least is not bad. They're not as good as SMU. But you tell me a night game on the road, strange things can happen, right?
Yeah.
Who's the coach at Duke? He used to be at Miami and then was the DC at Penn State, and the name is escaping me. Little guy. Oh my God, I can't think of his name. But he's a good coach, right? He was good enough to get the Miami head coaching job. He coached under James Franklin. He knows how to coach up a defense, and then he brought over the quarterback that played at Texas last year when Quinn Ewers went down. Oh my God, this is gonna. Are you
Manny Diaz? Holy shit!
Manny Diaz. Yeah, God,
I could not come up with it.
Yeah, Duke is good. Duke's a good program. That's not something you historically would hear me say about their football team, but
Sure.
It would not shock me if Duke wins this game on Saturday night.
That's fair.
It wouldn't shock me.
That's fair. For sure. Yeah. Corey, thanks. I was trying to Google it quick enough.
It is. Yeah. Gary, you know how bad I am at names, but
I'm terrible. I can't get Kurt Signetti correct. Like week after week, I can't get Kurt Signetti correct.
Signetti, you know.
All right, so we finished the top 25 board. You said you had a nice head coach equivalence, and then we'll see what else you had off the board for us.
Oh yeah, let me pull it up so I get this correct. I mean, I know the coach obviously, but I want to get the timeline of the game correct. Where was it? Before I give my coach, here we go. All right, so we're traveling to Maryland for this one. Maryland beat Southern Cal 29-28. Southern Cal was up 6 with 2 minutes to go in the game, and they allowed Maryland to go all the way down. They turned the ball over on downs, right? So Maryland scores a touchdown after Southern Cal had missed a field goal, right? Last week was the week of college kickers. But Southern Cal missed a field goal. Maryland goes down, scores a touchdown, and then turns Southern Cal over on downs after they go up the 1 point. So we talk all the time in the NFL about how Kyle Shanahan is an incredible coach, but he struggles to win the big one, right? He's this offensive guru. He put up 28-3 in the Super Bowl. By comparison here, let me get this straight in my head so I don't fuck it up like all the jokes I try to tell. Lincoln Riley is the Michael Jordan of Kyle Shanahan's. Because there's nobody better in college football than figure out how to lose a big game and blow a lead late. That's what he does. He did it year over year at Oklahoma. He's done it now. He did it with Caleb Williams 2 years ago in the Pac-12 championship game against Utah. We saw that. Now, Caleb Williams had a little bit of an ankle thing in that game. But, still you got to find a way to win that game. But Lincoln Riley is the Michael Jordan of Kyle Shanahan's as it relates to college football coaches. Because they blew a lead late against an awful Maryland team, and to drop that game by a point. So that was my off the board coach comparison.
Yeah, Sean McDermott's a little bit of a stretch. He's bad in game manager for sure, but blowing those leads. But yeah, for sure. Under Corey or BK under. Florida State. The wheels have fallen completely off. They are an absolute disaster there. I like that, though, the Michael Jordan of Kyle Shanahan's. That's an interesting kind of 6 degrees of separation for Lincoln Riley to Kyle Shanahan, and talking about blowing leads for sure. Anything off the board you want to talk about? I know we talked about Tulane not covering, despite they're kind of our darling when it comes to wagers in the weekend. But any others you want to talk about that were off the board?
Yeah, I gotta find it. I think I sent it to you. Was it new? Yeah, the New Mexico game, New Mexico and Utah State game we gave out where it was
78 was the
78.
opening over underline.
Smoked it. Final
Blew
score
right by it.
50-45. A 95 point total.
98 was a live line at one point.
Yep. And I guess while we have him here, we should probably mention that Texas Tech lost at home to Baylor. They got absolutely crushed. They lost by 24 points. That's
tough.
That's a tough look because Texas Tech was on a path to make a bowl game this year, and they still are. But like, if they had won that game, they'd been 4-0 in the Big 12 and looking to make a little bit of noise down the stretch. But you could lose by 24.
Back down to earth.
That's tough. Yeah. Not a good look. Not a good look. No. I think that's all I had off the board. Colorado, guns down, baby, guns down. Colorado gets another win. I think you and I went week by week to try to see if I could cash my under 5.5 ticket. I think they have to lose out from this point. Yeah, they're 5-2. They have to lose out. They absolutely crushed Arizona last weekend. Little surprising, but Arizona seems to be bad.
Arizona misses Jed Fish mightily.
Yes, they do.
Mightily.
Yes, they do. I guess shout out to Dion and those boys. Who knows?
Yeah. What are they? They're 3-1 or 4-1 in the Big 12 now.
They are. I just had it on my screen. Where did it go? Okay, regular season Colorado
3-1.
Yeah, they're
3-1 in the conference. They're in the running for sure.
Are they though?
I mean, they're within. They can see the leaders. I don't know that they'll ever get up there with them.
I guess technically they're tied for second.
Yeah. Also, though, this whole nonsense with the fucking Big 12 conference versus non-conference games. Iowa State just lost to a conference foe.
Yeah.
They're fucking 4-0 in the conference still.
Yep.
What are we doing? It's such nonsense. The Big 12 couldn't fucking figure that out before the season. It's so silly. It's so silly.
Iowa State won that game. They did not cover.
Did they? Okay. Yeah,
that's right. They won by 3.
I remember the red on it. And
yeah.
You're right.
They won by 3.
Win that.
There's
4 games so far this year that have been Big 12 foes playing. Utah had one. Whatever. Yep. I'm just mad. Big 12 could have done better.
It's because they were scheduled prior to realignment.
Yeah.
They were out of conference games, and then realignment happened. So now they became games. I mean, sure. I agree.
Got computers that can fucking algorithmize that shit.
I agree.
It's just weird. We'll be done with it after. I think it's only this year that they've got the issue. But now we've got the Pac-12 building back up. Who fucking knows when it comes to that?
Pac-12. Hey, Washington State and Oregon State playing twice next year.
Yeah.
In the regular season.
Yeah.
NFL, here we come.
Oh, yeah. All right, onward to week 9. We start the week out with Cuse and Pitt. We're on opposite sides of this. I'll have a money line on this because this is going to be win number 4 against a top 25 team for Syracuse this year. In a season where the schedule was very, very friendly, but they've been lucky, right? They've been very fortunate. Georgia Tech being ranked when they played them right the week before Georgia Tech moved into the polls. They were ranked when they beat them. UNLV, same thing. Here we've got Pitt, who I'm not super confident in Pitt after last weekend. I thought Eli Holstein had his bad game of the year, and I don't know if they can turn it around necessarily, but I'm gonna take Syracuse money line. I'm gonna ride this train as long as I fucking can. I don't get to ride this train very often with Syracuse football, so I'm gonna ride this fucking thing until the wheels fall off.
have at it. I hope it works out for you. It's another game that would not shock me. Syracuse is Syracuse is a pretty good team. They got talent. Kyle McCord is playing very well. Um, it is a road game against a ranked opponent on an off night, right? We always talk about how weird things happen on Friday nights. This is a Thursday, so
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure how to handicap that, but I will tell you that Pitt is one against the spread this year. I mean, I'm just going with the system play here, man. I'm taking the points, but it would be cool if Syracuse wins. I'll give you that.
Yeah, for sure. And correction, I was right when I first said win number 3 potentially against the top 25 team, not 4. But yeah, they've been pretty fortunate the way the schedule has fallen. Got to keep it going. Losing that fucking game to Stanford still is under my skin.
Yeah.
That was not the game they should have been losing this year.
Nope.
All right, onward. Boise State, UNLV. Mentioned UNLV a moment ago. They were a top 25 team before Syracuse knocked them off in overtime. UNLV's got the best player in college football, the most exciting player in college football, the most exciting rookie in the NFL next year, probably, depending on what quarterbacks end up where and what systems, yada yada. Ashton Jeanty, you're on the UNLV train. Do you think? Are you thinking money line or are you thinking field goal game at home?
You could talk me into a money line bet.
Okay.
I could see that.
All right.
Barry Odom is a very good defensive coach. The head coach at UNLV is a very good defensive coach. This was a bet on, again, them being at home. They're looking to get back into the race to be the group of 5 team to make the playoff. They need to win this game in order to make the conference championship game. All cards on the table, all hands on deck for this game Friday night. This really was just like, do I think that Ashton Jeanty is going to continue to be the best running back we've ever seen in college football? Or does he have like a stumble week in him, right? Does he average there are so many stats about Ashton Jeanty that are insane. He averaged 9.6 yards a carry against Hawaii last weekend, and his yards per carry average for the season went down. He's unfucking believable. Now, do I hope that Boise State wins? Yes, because I want to see Ashton Jeanty play in a playoff game. Do I think UNLV wins? Probably. They've got Haj Malik Williams and Ricky White III playing quarterback and wide receiver. It's like a 2-man versus a 1-man offensive show, right? And I'm betting on the quarterback wide receiver combo rather than the greatest college running back we've ever seen.
All right. My only counter to that is LaQuint Allen and Yassine Willis, who nobody knows on the college football stage, combined for 135 yards rushing against UNLV. I will take Ashton Jeanty on crutches over both of those running backs in terms of who would perform better against the UNLV team. So I think we could see Jeanty keep it going this weekend.
Sure.
But I agree with you that UNLV offense can score points. I do like Haj Malik Willis. I think he's a playmaker. He's pretty electric when he's got the ball in his hands. This could be a pretty high-scoring game. The over-under, I think it was like 60. I just
64 and a half.
I think, okay, that's what it is. I wouldn't be surprised if we get over that. I could see this game getting in the 70s, probably like a 38-35 type game. But I'm with Boise State. I need it to be 38-34 to cover the line. I think Jeanty keeps it going, though. I wouldn't be surprised if he got 200 yards against UNLV this weekend.
Sure, absolutely.
What a fucking season he's having, dude.
Oh, it's the best. If y'all are not staying up late to watch Ashton Jeanty, I don't know what you have happen unless you're going to church on Sunday morning. I get it. And sure, that's fine. Record the game, watch it after, because anything that Ashton Jeanty
at Waffle House after.
Exactly. And anything that Ashton Jeanty is doing on a football field, I promise you, is more entertaining than whatever NFL game you're watching at 1 o'clock on a Sunday. I promise you that.
That's a good way to put it. Onward down, Nebraska, Ohio State. It's 25.5. I just think it's too many points. It is at the Horseshoe, I believe. So maybe Ohio State can ride that home crowd to kind of blow Nebraska out, but I don't think so. This is probably a 21 to 24 point game. I do think Ohio State is demonstrably better than Nebraska, just not 4 touchdowns better.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just too many points. This was a team that you asked me earlier about in the season, or asked me about earlier this season because they were not covering big numbers. This is still that same team. They just now have lost to Oregon, and we think that they may have kicked it in gear because they got their
Yeah.
ass kicked, right? So keep that in mind when betting this. It is still the same team from earlier
Yeah.
in the year.
Yep. For sure. Yeah. With that two-headed monster in the backfield and the two-headed monster at wide receiver, not covering those lines early in the year was a bit of a head scratcher for sure. But like you said, they are the same team. Navy, Notre Dame. Notre Dame's laying 13. Disrespectful as fuck down in Annapolis. I will have a money line on this as well. I'm not as confident as I am in like the Syracuse money line, but I'm going to have fun with it while Navy continues to be this team that they are. I'll lay the money line. I'm going to get a ton of juice. I think it's going to be like plus 800 because it's 2 touchdowns. And we'll be cheering our asses off for the midshipmen to pull the upset against Notre Dame. It'd be a great feather in their cap as well in terms of the resume as we go forward. And looks good for the American Athletic Conference. You got a team joining the conference and going and knocking off Notre Dame, even if it's at home. That's a feather in the cap for that conference, but also for the midshipmen.
Yeah. I guess my pick ended up being Navy. I waffled a lot, right?
Okay. I didn't mess that up.
No. You're good. You're good. You did not mess it up. My pick is Navy. In order, so this is in my mind how this has to go. Navy's defense is not great, so Notre Dame is going to be able to run the ball.
Yep.
I said earlier that Navy and Army both score on just about every possession. That's going to have to continue this week in order for them to cover the 13.
Yep.
So my bet is that Navy at home, those cadets down there are they're not cadets, midshipmen.
Cadets
sorry,
in West
midshipmen.
Point.
Yeah. Army guys, hand up. Those midshipmen are going to have to bring the energy. They're going to have to get to Riley Leonard a couple times on defense, I think. And like I said, they're going to have to score on every single possession.
Yep.
But I think they can do it.
I think they can. Absolutely.
We saw what NIU did to Notre Dame, and Navy's running game is better than NIU's.
Much better than NIU's. Yep, for sure. All right. Washington, Indiana, we're both laying the points. I think this is a combination of Indiana's the real deal, it feels like, and Washington is not the real deal yet this year. I think Jedd Fisch is going to build a program to mimic what Kalen DeBoer was able to do up there. I have confidence in Jedd Fisch up in Washington, but I just don't. This year doesn't seem like they were able to really piece things together. Cupboard was kind of bare. DeBoer had a lot of upperclassmen on that Washington team that went to the national championship, bringing in a new regime. DeBoer also took a couple of guys with him from Washington that could have been difference makers. Indiana by 10 or so, probably. I think this could be a little bit of a grinded out game for Washington, but I think Indiana gets it done by probably 10.
Yeah, I agree. This is a Washington team, that was home favorites against Michigan. So this Washington team, obviously Vegas values them pretty highly. They value Indiana even higher, so I'm just going to ride with the favorites. And they're at home.
Yep, for sure. Oklahoma, Ole Miss. We're on the opposite sides of this. I understand why you went Ole Miss. This is one that I waffled on pretty hard. I think this was more of a spite choice for me because of what Lane Kiffin's done the last few weeks and that Ole Miss team. I just don't know that I trust them to cover big numbers. I know Oklahoma's bad. Oklahoma's lost a lot of people to injury. Oklahoma's on like their 47th quarterback, and then they're going back to Jackson Arnold. But I don't know that I trust Ole Miss to cover a big number right now. So I think that had a lot more to do with it for me than anything about either team.
Yeah, I haven't learned my lesson yet with Ole Miss, so I'm going to go back to the well of where I continue to bet on them to lay big numbers.
We're going to try to get some more water out of that well.
Yeah.
Oregon, Illinois. We're both on Illinois on this one. I think this is a lot more about, for me at least anyway, like 3 touchdowns is too many against an Illinois team that I've talked about. Kind of they want to drag you down in the mud and play a slower game, despite the 99 points that they put up in combination with Purdue in a game that just got really weird, right? That was kind of the anomaly of the season for a team like Illinois. I think they're going to keep this at a slower pace, and I don't think Oregon minds playing that style of ball. 13 play drives, let Dylan Gabriel hit guys in the flat, hit guys over the middle, and just move the ball down the field methodically. I think Illinois want to play that style of ball as well. So both of these teams could be chewing the clock, and there just might not be enough time for Oregon to win by more than 3 touchdowns.
Yep, I agree. Took the words out of my mouth. Illinois likes to slow it down and then let Luke Altmaier make a play at like big moments, and he's done it all year long.
Yep.
This was kind of another system pick for me. Not only is it a lot of points for Oregon to cover, but Oregon is 3-4 against the spread, and Illinois is 5-2. So like the numbers say go with Illinois here.
I feel even better about my pick now. I like it. BYU, UCF. You're taking the points with BYU. I'm going to lay the points with UCF in Orlando. Cross country for BYU. I also liked what I saw, the fight out of UCF last week against Iowa State. If we can avoid dropping the ball before the end zone, although they did end up scoring a touchdown after that, it's just funny to point it out. I think UCF is starting to kind of put things together a little bit. Gus Malzahn maybe got his head out of his ass or whatever was going on the early part of the season with UCF. I'm going to lay the points at home. That's the big thing to me. I waffled a bit on this one, and I would not be surprised if BYU wins this outright, let alone cover.
Yeah, I had a lot of favorites on my list, so I was looking for like an underdog that I felt a little bit convicted with. BYU, we've given them a lot of love on the show for going into stadiums and kind of bulldozing over those defenses. I could see that happening with UCF. Colorado, a team that is not great at running the ball. Although they try a lot, they're just not super good at it.
Yeah, they try hard.
They do. They do for sure. The rushing offense in Provo is better than the rushing offense in Boulder, and Colorado lit up this UCF defense in Orlando. So give me the BYU.
All right. Alabama, Missouri. My choice had a bit to do about, I just don't know that Brady Cook's going to be 100%. I also think that there's a lot of bulletin board material right now for Alabama in T-Town. I think they're going to come out, and maybe next week I'm going to come on this show and be like, motherfucker, I believed in Bama one more time, and I was wrong again. But I do think that the bulletin board material, and I believe in Kalen DeBoer. I just think that they're going to write this thing. The last 3 weeks have been really miserable for Alabama football. Actually, probably like we could say the last 3.5 weeks, because that second half against Georgia was atrocious from a defensive perspective, despite finding a way to get the win at the end with 17-year-old Ryan Williams torching the Georgia defense. But maybe it's fool's gold to me, but I think Alabama's going to get the ship righted, and I don't know that Brady Cook's going to be 100%. I trust him. He's a dog, but if you're diminished against this Alabama team, I think that could be a big problem.
Yeah, not only will Brady Cook potentially not be 100%, but they are also going to be missing Nate Noel, their number one rusher.
Yeah.
I believe it was Nate Noel. I saw they're missing the rusher. Nate Noel. I was right. Yeah. Their leading running back for Missouri is going to be out this weekend. You mentioned it, a lot of bulletin board material down there in Tuscaloosa for a very good football coach and a pretty talented roster. I don't know when I'm going to be able to bet on Alabama again as only a 2-touchdown favorite.
Yeah.
So let me lay the points, and I'll take Bama at home.
Yeah, for sure. And just for, to talk about where the line is moving, it's up to 16.5. And I put this graphic together this afternoon. So just so the betting public out there knows, the line's moving pretty heavily. It's moved a field goal since about 3:00 this afternoon. I think I was putting this thing, 4:00 this afternoon. I was putting it together. It's shifted pretty heavily. So we're not the only ones.
I see it at 17.5 right now.
It's gone 4 points. Then holy shit. ESPN has moved three points, and I know the betting books. It's a lot more real time, so it's up to 17.5. Yeah, I wonder if Brady Cook's not playing. I wonder if there's some news out there that Brady Cook ain't playing.
Maybe.
I did see earlier some news that his status was uncertain. I wouldn't be surprised if during this show there's been some breaking news that he won't play. That feels like a line that moves that much
yeah, that
because
was
maybe he's out, but
a day ago.
or the betting public just believes in Alabama.
Eli Drinkwitz gives cryptic response. So I don't think we'll know until Saturday when the availability comes out. Or maybe it's no, I think it's Thursdays the availability comes out. So we probably will know tomorrow. But I see this line anywhere from 17.5 to 13.5, depending on what book you're looking at.
Okay.
But yeah, somebody somewhere knows something.
Yeah, there's something going on. Texas, Vanderbilt, you're taking Vandy 18.5. I'm laying them with Texas. This for me, I keep biting these fucking big numbers on bounce back weeks. I could probably be very wrong on this. I believe in Diego Pavia. I believe in what Vanderbilt's doing. Maybe I'm a sucker for a bounce back week. I think Texas is gonna come out fucking motivated. I could be very, very wrong about. I could be like 20 points wrong about this and not be surprised next week if we're talking about Vanderbilt upsetting Texas at home.
I would also not be shocked if Texas covers the spread and they just go in and lay the smackdown on Vandy. But this is a Diego Pavia bet.
Yep.
Carson Beck was able to light up that Texas defense last week, even though he threw 3 picks. Diego Pavia is a better college quarterback than is Carson Beck. He does not turn the ball over, and if you can control the clock and control the game on the ground against Texas, we have seen it. We just saw it. You're able to control the game and potentially win. I'm not saying that Vandy is going to be able to win this game. If they were able to knock off 2 top, what did Texas come in at this week? They're 5, so if they're able to beat 2 top 5 programs in the same year, that would be insane. I don't think that's going to happen, but 18.5 is a lot of points.
Yeah.
You tell Diego Pavia that he's getting 18.5 points. I'm going to tell you he's covering. Oh, boy. Gary, is your internet flickering because you're outside? Is your mobile show not being as mobile as we want it to be? There is the possibility of that. Oh, are we back? Uh-oh. Gary, if you go on your iPhone, you could turn on a mobile. Oh, you don't have an iPhone. Wait, so you can't do that. That's okay. But I will continue the show for the rest of the folks that are here. We're going to move on down to Miami minus 21. Gary and I both on Miami laying 21 points, 3 scores. For anyone that is familiar with what has been happening in Tallahassee and the Florida State Seminoles, last year with Mike Norvell going undefeated in the regular season and winning the ACC championship seems like a million goddamn years ago because it's been basically the season from hell for the Seminoles this year, starting with the loss in Ireland to Georgia Tech. They gave up 1 million rushing yards. The defense is not good, and they still have not figured it out at the quarterback position, which is unfortunate for them because Mike Norvell was brought there to do exactly that, to build that roster, find them a championship-winning quarterback, and bring them into the promised land. And that has not happened. They are a very bad football team, and truthfully, I'm a little shocked that this line is only 21. I think it's that way because Miami's defense has been bad like the last 3 weeks, going back to that Virginia Tech game on a Thursday night. But that being said, I'm still going to lay the 21 because I believe in Cam Ward. I believe in the Hurricanes, and the U is back, baby. Last year, I was saying Texas is back. This year, I'm saying the U.
Yeah, thanks for covering down. I must have lost some Wi-Fi out there where I was sitting, but
on your iPhone, it has a mobile hotspot thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I agree with you. There was like a fleeting moment where I kind of waffled on this number because I was like, fuck, Miami's defense is so bad. Mm-hmm. Then I remembered how bad Florida State's been offensively. They don't have a quarterback on the roster, I don't think. So yeah, I'm with you. The number could have been probably 27.5, and I could have talked myself into it. I think this is a game that Miami can kind of run away and hide and maybe start to feel a little better about their ability to put their thumb on a foe. It is a rivalry game. Florida State might be motivated to get up a little bit in this game, but I just don't think they got the horses to stick with Miami, especially with Cam Ward and the way that offense is going. Miami's defense does scare you a little bit, but if anybody's going to make your defense feel good about themselves, it's this Florida State fucking offense.
Yep.
All right. Penn State, Wisconsin. You've got Wisconsin taking 6.5. I'm going to land with Penn State. I know that that environment can get a little raucous up there. They get a little sauce in them up there in Wisconsin, and they can go nuts. But I look at this Wisconsin team, and I think they're a year away. I know what they're building up there. I know they're trying to transition offenses. I just think the talent at Penn State is going to be enough for them to win by probably 7. That's why I went with this number. A little bit of a coin flip on either side. I think it's by the hook, one way or the other. With this number feels probably right. So I just they win by 7, I'll cover. If they win by 6, I won't. That's kind of what it boiled down to for me. I don't think they blow them out, but I think a touchdown is probably the difference in this game.
Okay, couple of questions for you based off this game. Do you think that Southern Cal is better than Wisconsin?
No, but I know where you're going. I get where you're going with that, but going to the Coliseum in Los Angeles is different than going to a friendly, Jesus Christ, familiar is the word I wanted.
Okay, all right.
Familiar environment inside the Big Ten, a foe that you've played a lot of times. I do understand, though, that the struggles against USC are an indicator that certainly this number could be Wisconsin could win this outright, right? If you based it simply on that USC game. But I just, Wisconsin more than Southern Cal. The travel there as opposed to the travel all the way to the Coliseum. So that, for me, that's kind of the difference in comparing Southern Cal to Wisconsin.
Do they have to get on a bus? I was going to
counter that point.
That's fair. My transitive property, if you thought that Southern Cal was not better than Wisconsin, they needed a 20 point, 14 point comeback or whatever it was to beat Southern Cal on the road.
Yep.
Also, do they have to get on a bus before they fly to Wisconsin? I don't know. I'm not sure the logistics there. That was kind of a big deal.
That's a tough look for fucking James Franklin.
Yeah.
Like, what were you trying to accomplish with that statement? Were you just trying to build in an excuse?
He almost needed it.
Yeah, you almost fucking did.
Follow-up question. Does James Franklin still coach the football team at Penn State University?
Is Wisconsin ranked, though?
No, but Southern Cal wasn't ranked.
I know.
He has to go. They're going to play jump around at the end of the third quarter, and he's going to be like, oh, my God, what is football? Camp Randall is going to be shaking, and he's going to be like, I don't know what to do. Now, I could very well be wrong, and they run for 260 yards and just kind of steamroll Wisconsin. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Wisconsin loses by a field goal.
That's fair. I don't think Penn State blows them out, like I said, but a touchdown. Give me a touchdown. I think that they are going to be able to kind of bully them a little bit. It's a transition there in Wisconsin. They are making a drastic transition too, right? They're not just changing regimes. They're changing regimes, style of football on both sides of the ball, and recruiting a different type of player than Wisconsin traditionally recruits to fit that style that they're trying to build up there. LSU, A&M. I'm going to take the points with LSU. We talked a moment ago about what you thought the ceiling was for LSU in terms of potentially, right? If they win this game this weekend, I think you're absolutely right. I don't know that I'm taking them to win outright, but I think this game ends on a kicker's foot. So for that reason, I think one of these two teams is going to win by 1 or 2 points. And that being the spread, I'm going to take the points with LSU. I don't know that I would lay the money line on this game. I don't have that confidence that they're going to win, but I think this is, like I said, this is a game that I think ends on a kicker's foot.
So this game,
if it's tied when it ends on a kicker's foot, you're going to get this right and I'm going to get it wrong.
That's
but
true.
I'm banking on it being a game-winning kick that's not tied.
For LSU. Okay, got it. This was a game that I went back and forth on a lot. This is a game that has playoff implications. This is a game that has personal implications for me because if Texas A&M loses, I then, for the third time, get to play an SEC team coming off a loss. I get scratch that fourth time. Excuse me, fourth time I get to play an SEC team coming off a loss in the same season. So that's super fun for me, being a South Carolina fan.
Oh, them's the breaks, huh?
Yeah, right. So I'm going with Texas A&M because they are at home. This team is better than they were in week 1 when they lost to Notre Dame. Mike Elko has had 8 weeks to coach these boys up of actual like in-game video and experience, right? I think they're better now than they were previously. We talked about them how last week I thought it was kind of a look-ahead game going to Starkville, kind of, giving up 24 points to a not great Mississippi State team, and actually a bad Mississippi State team who just so happened to be playing well the last couple of weeks. LSU is very good. A&M is very good, but I think I agree with you. This game ends around 3, probably on a kick or somebody like driving late and just not being able to score. I'm going with A&M. I'm not super convicted. I don't want to play another team coming off a loss, so I just kind of have to lay the points here.
Bet with your heart.
I just so happened to lay the points with the home team, so I'm okay with that.
Hey, laying the points with the home team is usually you can play the odds, right?
It's also still Brian Kelly, so take that into consideration.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. Kansas State. Before the season, this would have felt like a very exciting game.
Yep.
Kansas is not at all on the level that we thought they might be, even offensively. I was a little surprised this number was 10. In Manhattan. If this happened to be a road game for the Wildcats, maybe 10, but I think I would lay this up to like 17, maybe. I just think Kansas State is a better team. They're at home. Kansas has really just missed the mark this year. I do like what they've got going on there in terms of being able to build a competitive program at a perennially basketball heavy powerhouse blue chip basketball school, but I just don't know that they've got enough to offer Kansas State this weekend.
So I have a guess as to why this is 10. My assumption, so going back and looking at the Kansas State schedule and having watched a decent, I think I've watched just about, except for the UT Martin game, I think I've watched every K-State game this year.
I've caught
K-State, a lot. Yeah. K-State is a team that struggles with mobile quarterbacks. They lost to BYU because they got crushed in the run game, and BYU's leading rusher is their quarterback.
Yeah.
So, he's tied with their running back for a number of carries on the season, and obviously can pass the ball as well. Jalen Daniel, Jalen Daniel. I'm getting his name right, correct? That's the person I'm thinking of. The quarterback for Kansas is
Jalen Daniels.
Yeah. Not to be confused with Jaden Daniels. Yes, Jalen Daniels is as mobile as it comes in the game of college football. Yep. He's a guy that can get out of the pocket. He can make things happen with his feet. He can also throw the hell out of the ball. He's a good player playing on a bad team currently, right? He's one of those guys. He's the perfect college quarterback, Yep. So if there was a reason as to why the line is 10, I think that probably is it, because they're susceptible to those dual threat guys. Tulane, another one, that was a close game. They won that game, but they needed a pick late in that game because Tulane was driving, and Tulane's quarterback is a true freshman who was mobile enough to get out and make things happen outside the pocket, right?
Yeah.
That's my guess as to why it's 10. I'm going to lay them as well. I think I just talked about how I think K-State is the best team in the Big 12, and if they were to make the title game, that they would probably win it. So I have to stick with my guns here. I'm going to go with K-State and Avery Johnson. I just think they make it happen. Again, laying points with the home team feels pretty good on a Saturday night.
Yes, sir. All right, then rounding out our top 25 action, we've got SMU, we've got Duke. You're taking the points with Duke. I'm going to lay them with SMU. I agree with you that Duke is a better team than they get credit for. I just think that SMU has figured it out. SMU has their identity. They've settled on a quarterback. I've always been very vocal about the 2 quarterback system. If you have 2, you have none, in my opinion. They started the season not sure who was going to break out and be the starting quarterback there. They've settled in. He's electric. I think SMU has potential of upsetting the whole Clemson-Miami meeting up in the ACC title game because their schedule is fairly favorable, in my opinion, down the stretch. This road game to Duke, they can't look past it because they've got Pitt next week. Pitt's the number 19 team in the country. Could be a look-ahead game. If they stay the course, I think SMU is the better team. I think they win by 2 touchdowns, but 11.5 is quite a bit for a Duke team that just really kind of put the they really put the brakes on FSU last week. If they can slow that offense down, SMU might be in some trouble.
Yeah. Malik Murphy is the quarterback I was thinking of that transferred from Texas.
Yes.
To if you have four quarters, you have a dollar. Yeah, and if you bring in Jake Ferentz, you have a Jew dollar. And we all know how Jews like their dollars.
Yes.
No, I just think it's a lot of points. I think that SMU is definitely the better team, but a 6-1 Duke team playing at home cannot be overlooked with what I think is a pretty good quarterback coach combination, right? I know Manny Diaz is a defensive guy, but he still has his fingerprints all over this team. We saw Duke play very, very well for like most of the year last year under Mike Elko. I don't know that this team has had that much of a precipitous drop off from last season. Manny Diaz has kept the train rolling there in Durham. Also, these Duke fans, let me tell you one thing. They are warming up for the real season down there in Durham. They are going to be tailgating and getting their voices ready to be heard.
Yeah.
Come basketball season.
They're ready for Cooper Flag.
We are Cooper Flag might be at this game. We don't know.
Yeah.
Fair. I mean, it'll be easy to spot if he is because he's huge. But I think this is probably, I guess UCF BYU would be an upset if BYU wins, but like this is probably the most likely upset spot of the weekend, in my opinion. I mean, maybe Boise State Friday night. Home game. That's a lot of points. SMU.
You get some good juice at 11.5, man. If you're going to take the money line up that.
I shouldn't have said it's probably the most likely because we get LSU. There's a lot of teams that get upset this week. But yeah, I think Duke covers. Yeah, I think Duke covers.
All right. I like it.
And it's not because I have a jersey hanging on my wall. This is
yeah, that's not a football jersey.
No, it's a JJ Redick. I'm actually a big Los Angeles Lakers fan. I don't know if you know this about me.
Yeah. Suddenly.
Yeah, all of a sudden. Very, very suddenly.
They got off on the right foot. Big win opening night.
Yeah, it cost me money.
LeBron and Bronny got on the floor at the same time. But
yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow.
What's that?
We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow night, 7:00.
I have an answer for this question, by the way.
All right.
I have an answer for this question. Princeton and Harvard are playing this weekend.
Okay.
And you might think, oh, that's the battle of the nerds. That's no fun. No.
Not so fast.
Hear me out. Yeah, not so fast, my friend. Harvard, leading rusher on the year, 278 yards. Princeton, leading rusher on the year, 256 yards. So if you were looking for an absolute rock fight, this is the game for you. They also are both 1-1 and tied for third in the Ivy League Conference. Yeah. So we're just talking middle of the road, pounded into each other. Absolutely nothing exciting will happen in this game. But if you're talking FCS football, yeah, that was the best game I could find on the schedule. I wanted to go Montana and Northern Colorado, but this game just seemed a little more up BK's alley. He's into smart people stuff. I don't know. He's way smarter than I am. So this just seems like a game he would enjoy where absolutely nothing happens on offense.
Yeah.
As a former college tight end himself, I'm sure he would understand that.
For sure. All right. Well, we've rounded out Week 9's top 25. What do you got for us off the board, man?
Off the board. West Virginia and Arizona play this weekend in Tucson. Anytime, well, I guess last year, anytime that Tedero McMillan and Noah Fafita got on the field, it was going to be fun. I don't know if you can say that this year. But that has the chance to be a very fun game. Excuse me. Southern Miss and JMU. JMU really looking to get back on the horse after kind of fumbling the bag last week. 24.5-point favorites at home. TCU played a game and won last week in which they scored 13 points. They beat
In college football.
Yeah, well, they beat Utah.
Yeah.
So that's a bad look. But Utah, whose offensive coordinator, just going to step down, by the way. I don't know if you saw that. So not great times there in Salt Lake City. But they're playing BK's Texas Tech Raiders, or Red Raiders. So if you're looking for an absolute clash of styles, we talked about how Texas Tech scored 35 last week and lost to Dave Aranda, who probably is going to get fired at Baylor. Looking for a high-flying Texas Tech offense versus just a knockdown, drag-out TCU team who cannot do anything on offense. That may be the game for you.
We got to turn the guns over, right? We got to get
the guns up. Get the guns back up, baby. Guns back up. I know there were not a ton of off-the-path games. I mean, Northwestern and Iowa play. If that had been last year, the over-under might have been like 19.5. But Iowa's kind of figured it out. I don't know. Yeah. It's maybe here's one for you. I just talked about how Dave Aranda, and I'll give the guns up, baby. And okay, that being the middle finger. All right, okay, all right, BK.
It's a family program.
Yeah, this is a family program. God damn it. So at the beginning of the year, you and I both talked about how the Big 12 was probably going to be the most competitive conference, right? They had the most number of teams from top to bottom that felt as though they could compete and win this conference. So that turns out to not be true. They have like 4 teams that are going to do it. One of those teams that we discussed a little bit in the preview was Dave Aranda's Baylor team. They're not good. I know that they just beat Texas Tech, and I apologize, BK, but Dave Aranda is probably going to lose his job. Yeah. Another team in the Big 12 who is not going to fire their coach, but is also not going to win the Big 12 is Oklahoma State. There is a possibility that Ollie Gordon has gotten his head on straight, has gotten his shoes on the correct feet, and could go down to Waco and run all over those Baylor Bears and potentially put the nail in the coffin of Dave Aranda's Baylor tenure there. So if you want to see a coach get fired in real time, root for Oklahoma State and Ollie Gordon to do that for you.
Yeah, if you're looking for a train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, appreciate you, man. Good episode. Appreciate all the comments and the activity in the chat. Interesting weekend coming up. We've got some teams trying to bounce back. Playoff race is starting to heat up. We're 2 weeks out from the first CFP selection show. That usually comes out after the week 10 games, if I'm not mistaken. It might be in week 10, so we might only be about a week and a half out from the first selection show. But we're going to start to see what the committee is thinking, right? That's usually what's the most fun piece of the first few CFP selection shows is the inside scoops that you get from some of the folks that sit in with some of the people on the panel, on the committee, and some of the ways that, the talking heads feel about where they sit in terms of the rankings and how things are racked and stacked, what conferences got overemphasized versus the conferences that got underrepresented. So interesting times. I know, we've complained about the watering down of the playoff, but we love to talk about stuff, right? So when we get these CFP rankings, we're going to start to have some conversations about where teams should be, shouldn't be, who got left out, who's sneaking in, and who could be dark horses to make a run potentially in the college football playoff. But for Bentley, for everybody else at the backyard. Oh, yep. Go ahead.
2 quick things. One more off the board game. I cannot believe we didn't do this. Tulane. Tulane. Currently 7.5-point favorites on the road at North Texas. That's not the most interesting part of that, though. Your over-under, your total line is sitting at 67.5.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Light them up.
So that was the last off the board. I have a quick plug for tomorrow's show. We have a special guest coming on, because I know you probably will be out for the first half. We brought in someone, a special guest. We're going to do a WNBA Finals recap
Oh,
to
I
start
love
the
it.
show.
Love it.
Special guest speaker who is tuned into WNBA basketball as much as anybody I know. So we
That's
will have a
fantastic.
guest, and then we will get into opening week of actual NBA basketball.
Excellent. Tune in tomorrow, Backyard Buckets, 7 p.m. Special guest talking about WNBA Finals Roundup here. There was some real drama at the end of Game 5 of the WNBA Finals. One
Yep.
coach saying that they had the series stolen from them. Breanna Stewart playing hero. It very interesting WNBA Finals. Very interesting WNBA season. I'll be interested to hear thoughts from the special guest. Caitlin Clark, obviously being the supernova, influencing a lot of changes for the WNBA, ratings going up, money coming in, those sorts of things. Winning Rookie of the Year almost unanimously. So yeah, definitely that's very interesting. And of course, we'll talk NBA basketball on Buckets tomorrow as well. But for Bentley, for everybody else here at Backyard Sports, this has been another episode of Tailgate Trash Talk. We are out.